On behalf of James family, I welcome you here today. My name is Susan Zoller, and I'm one of the ministers here at the Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. In case you are wondering where you are, the Spiritual Living Center is truly an interfaith spiritual center. We welcome all. We believe in the divine presence and the love of God for all. And so in that light today, we come here to celebrate the life of James Thomas Bell, to honor him and to remember him. May you find support and comfort in being here today and in the days to come. Grief is a natural process when we deal with loss. And when we are aware that someone's end of their life is approaching before it happens, we have time to deal with that in some way. When the death is sudden and unexpected, we still go through the grief process, but it does take a different feel at that moment. To grieve is to say that you love the person, to say that you love James in particular, to know that it is your way and your body's way truly of dealing with his transition from this life. And so as you go through those steps, you'll feel a lot of different emotions. You'll feel a lot of different physical sensations at times. And I ask you to consider just letting yourself go through them as much as possible, because that's the way to go forward, is to go through it. There are no answers to the many unanswered questions that you may have and your thoughts. There are certainly no easy answers. But as we allow ourselves to feel the emotions and go through, we do go forward. And there are times this must be private, and there are times it is best to share with others. Let your faith lead you at this time, whatever your faith is. Your presence here today is testimony to the loving effect that James had on all those who knew him. It is a testament to the way that you care about him still, because that caring will never cease. Science teaches us that energy and matter can never be destroyed, only changed in form. And as such, and from my own belief, James is just as much alive right this very moment as he has ever been, but in a different way. Now, different religions and traditions all have varying beliefs about what happens when the body is no longer needed. Overall, humans believe there is much more to life than what we can physically ever take in. You know, perhaps you'll feel James' presence. Perhaps you'll dream about him. Certainly, he will always be there in your memory and in your thoughts. James has been described as one of the most loving people ever. He always smiled, even though he was very shy. I'm sure you know this. He was a man of few words. He certainly was an interesting man, and everyone who knew him considered him a friend. How many of you here were close to James? Well, you may know a lot of facts about his life, and so if you know these facts, just let yourself remember him. And for those who might not know him, here's some interesting things about James. This is why I find him such an interesting man. The effect he had on the world and the things that he did with his own life. He certainly was an individual. Many of you may know that several years ago, James traveled alone to Thailand for 3 weeks. He was fascinated by the elephants that traveled up and down the streets at all hours of the day, and that certainly made an impression upon him. It's not an average bear who just happens to take off and go to Thailand by himself. So this just shows you what kind of man he was. Did you know he loved horror films, particularly ones with zombies? Did you know that last fall he attended attended a red carpet movie premiere. I don't know which one. If you know, I'd like to know. And he met Hugh Jackman and Robin Williams. He did. So let's look at his life. James was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He also lived in the Bahamas, Michigan, and Georgia. Now the name James Thomas comes from the paternal and maternal grandparents, the grandfathers. His mother thought that her brother, Thomas Jr., would have a son and name him Thomas. So his name was ordered as James Thomas, so that the name would be there for James III. Thomas Jr. had 2 sons, by the way, neither of whom is named Thomas. It is said that when James walked into a room from his childhood onward, that his great smile just lit up a room. One of the most lovable children when he was born, his parents were a bit concerned or alarmed to say that he was so affectionate to everyone that they weren't quite sure that he would be not affectionate to anyone. He was that kind of loving man. And a child, it started then. In 1986, when James was 3, the whole family was part of 3 television commercials for Hyundai cars. His father was working for the Hyundai dealership. James appeared locally in his glory on television. He received his first 2-wheel bike at 5 years old, and his parents were going to teach him that all-important first bike ride information and be there for support. His mother told me that she stepped back into the house for just a moment for something, and when she came back, to her amazement, without their guidance, he was already riding down the driveway. This is fascinating. He graduated from 6th grade in the Bahamas. And while we know him to be very shy and quiet, a man indeed of few words, he actually gave a speech and handed out awards to the underclassmen. He had another side. He came to Georgia in '98 and he attended high school in Cherokee County. And did you know he took acting classes there and was in several plays? He had such a knack for this. His family thought they'd be going to the Oscars at some point in time, or were happily preparing. But his interest changed and he became much more involved in behind-the-scenes work. He was in film and music management and production. He subsequently managed a band and went on tour through the United States and Canada. After high school, James went to work at Progressive, the skate park. In 2005, he began working at South Star as a document scanner and also at the skate park. He felt so comfortable at work, he thought of South Star as family. I'm sure, how many of you are here from South Star today? You know, even when he was working at South Star, and he did love it, he continued on at Progressive. He loved the skate park. He loved the people who were there and the environment. Now, interestingly, he did own a skateboard, but if anyone has ever seen him use it, his family would like you to speak to them afterwards because they don't know that he ever got on it. He never did stop working at the skateboard, even the whole time he was at South Star or touring with the band, and eventually he did go back there full time. He was a manager of a band. In '06, that band was part of the Warped Tour, and as I said, they went through the United States and Canada. James loved color. He loved so many things. And it's interesting, his favorite color was red, and you may have known it because he had a tattoo on his elbow on the right side that was a rising sun flag. And although the other tattoo on his arm was black, it had red connotations. It was a cherry bomb, and it had a red fuse.